Hi, everyone. Welcome. We'll give like a few more seconds for folks to join, and then we'll get started. All right, looks like we're good to go. So hi, everyone. My name is Alejandra Perez, and I am one of the members of the Washington Dream Coalition. And I'm joined today by three other folks who were part of creating this beautiful report. So I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Larissa.
Hi, all. My name is Daniela.
Hello, everybody. I'm Julie.
Yeah, so we are 4 of the 7 folks who were part of creating the Community Provides Undocumented Communities in Washington State during the COVID-19 pandemic report, which was based out of a lot of work that we did throughout the pandemic. Oh, is there a CO person in here? Somebody, I think, accidentally closed the breakout rooms.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and I don't think we can change that.
Yeah.
So
We're getting kicked out soon.
yeah, so if everyone just remembers to come back, and I'm sure that they'll give you the full 20 minutes again. Sorry about that.
No worries. I just noticed it in the corner of my eye. Before you go, I'll give you a quick intro of what this was. So if you can go to the next slide, Julie, we'll be super quick with this one. Just a little bit about where this report comes from is that the Washington Dream Coalition created a grassroots fund in March of 2020 for undocumented people in Washington State, which came out of the lived experience that a lot of us have having undocumented family members or being undocumented ourselves and seeing directly the financial impact that the pandemic was having and knowing that we were being excluded specifically from not only unemployment programs, but also from stimulus checks. So if you were undocumented or had a family member who was, you could not get the stimulus check. So very targeted. And that was like the creation as to why we had a grassroots fund. And within 6 months, we successfully raised over $7.1 million, supporting over 6,000 families across Washington State. So that is a little bit of where that story comes from. And when we come back, we'll tell you a little bit about the rest of all of this. So we'll see you all in a few seconds.
Sorry about that, everyone.
Welcome back, everyone. It looks like there might be a couple of folks who will join us soon. But we'll go ahead and continue where we left off.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Tech happens. So let me move the breakout away from me also. So as I was mentioning, that is a little bit of like how we went about creating this grassroots fund, and primarily for it being personally a very personal issue for many of us, right? So like seeing directly how people in our households were being impacted, and therefore that we knew that because we were literally being excluded from things by the government, it needed to be based on community to do this work. So like I mentioned, over 6 months, we raised over $7.1 million, supporting over 6,000 families across Washington State. And this fund actually became the blueprint to advocate for local and state cash assistance programs for undocumented people. So after the WDC fund started and folks were seeing the success from it, we started to advocate alongside other 400 organizations across Washington to demand from our state government to do a cash assistance program for undocumented folks. And after lots of fighting and lots of advocacy, we were able to be, that was able to become a reality. And we knew that after that, like being part of both local and state cash assistance programs, and as well as our grassroots one, we learned a lot, and we wanted to document this story through this community-led research process. And we were able to get some funding from COO to be able to do this really great report. So we will share a little bit with you next around like what is in there, and then show you the report as well. So like I mentioned, there was a lot of funds that happened based out of ours. So these are the 5 different funds that happen, both city, grassroots, and statewide. And a little bit about like who the applicants are. So there was a lot of applicants who applied, and these were the folks who were also eligible. So over 78,000 folks from applied and were eligible for the Washington COVID-19 Immigrant Relief Fund of 2020. Over 4,000 folks, almost 5,000, applied to the Seattle COVID-19 Disaster Relief Fund for Immigrants. Over 19,000 folks applied to our grassroots fund, the COVID-19 Relief Fund for undocumented individuals. Over 13,000 applied and were eligible for the Washington COVID-19 Immigrant Relief Fund 2020 recertification, which was part of leftover CARES Act money. And then over 64,000 Washington applied and were eligible for the Washington COVID-19 Immigrant Relief Fund of 2021. So just a little bit about who the fund applicants are. And again, there's way more details in the report that we can't share in the 60 minutes we have left. But this one was around residency. So like where do undocumented folks reside? So they reside across all the state, though most reside in King County and Yakima County. So King County over 20,000 folks and Yakima County over 12,000 folks. The vast majority of these individuals lost their income when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, which was over 87% of them. And 50% of them were at high risk of contracting and or contracted the virus. Over 73% of them speak Spanish as their primary language. And the top 2 job sectors reported by applicants were in agriculture, over 27,000, and restaurant and food service, over 11,000 folks. So this is just a little bit about who those fund applicants were. And like I mentioned, there's way more details also in the report. So I'll go ahead and pass it to Larissa to share a little bit about what's in there and what did we learn from undocumented folks through this process.
Yeah, so we wanted to know a little bit more in depth about how this cash assistance program affected folks and how the pandemic affected them as well. So we hosted various focus groups. Most of the participants were from King County. Some folks were from other parts around the state, but we were able to hear from 34 participants on how this cash assistance programs and pandemic affected them. So one of the research questions that we were asking folks that we further wanted to understand was, how has our undocumented communities experienced the COVID-19 pandemic, and how do experiences vary by individual circumstances? And one of the themes that we heard from many of the participants was that basic needs must be met. So the data and stories highlights different regional considerations, but what remains the same is that there has been a systemic failure to fully protect those who work to feed us, sustain us, and build our communities. And here's just a quote from one of our participants. I try to give the information to my coworkers and tell them to share it with their neighbors, their family members, right? Because that is what we need right now, to unify us as an immigrant community. And for us, we just wanted to share this with you all because the way that undocumented people were able to survive this pandemic was because they supported each other, because communities supported them. So one thing that we heard from many folks share during these focus groups is that when they would learn about a new resource, for example, maybe a food bank, or there was some type of program that was supporting people, they would share it with their neighbors or people around them, so they also would get that support that they needed. Another research question that we were asking to further understand was, how have systemic regional responses to the pandemic impacted the ways undocumented communities navigated the COVID-19 pandemic to meet their basic needs? What types of short-term assistance are most impactful? And one of the major themes that we heard from many folks was respond to our communities. Some short-term aid has helped applicants, but there still remains a massive amount of unmet need. And just to be more specific on how much unmet need there is currently is $58 million. And that is just for the folks who applied. We know that not every undocumented person felt safe applying for this, right? Because once you do apply for one of these cash assistance programs, you're basically saying, I am undocumented, and many folks do live in fear. So we do know that this need is actually bigger, but for those who did apply, this is the current need. And to address this, barriers must be removed so that undocumented immigrants can access healthcare and economic supports. And another research question that we further wanted to learn more about was, in what ways have undocumented communities come together during this unprecedented time to provide support to one another? A major theme that we, I think that's not the right.
Oh, sorry. Let me get back to the right slide for you.
Oh,
You're okay, Julie.
I was
Good
gonna say,
thing I
like,
know
wait,
the
we
slides,
don't-
because I was like, I've seen that slide and it's not there. Okay.
Is this the correct one? Yes.
Well, that's, yeah. So going back to the previous research question, yes, this research question. So responding to the needs of the community is one thing that undocumented folks shared in the focus group. If you go to the next slide, Julie, this is one quote that one of the participants shared. Honestly, it is very beautiful. It feels nice, even though we're undocumented here, to have support like that is well, to have support like this that is well received and feels beautiful. So one thing that folks was really appreciative of these cash assistance programs that were coming about, just because prior to these cash assistance programs, many folks did feel invisible and didn't know where they were going to get support. So for them, it felt like I was being seen just through these programs. And then if you want to go to the next one. Okay, yeah. And then Daniela, if you want to take it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Larissa. So the next research question that we wanted to dig deeper with, as we spoke to undocumented folks in these focus groups and interviews around transformative systems change, we were asking what types of long-term systemic changes are most needed. And from this question, we learned a lot. There is a lot of things that we learned that, again, it's very well explained on the report, but one of the themes we found was that folks just want to build a better world. Undocumented immigrants, like all community members, need sustainable supports. This includes medical care without fear and comprehensive mental health care. And so this really important for us to highlight, because this is what the community is demanding and needing systemic support with, right? Where there needs to be permanent support that promote the long-term stability for undocumented immigrants and their families. And just being able to go to the doctor, being able to get access to these very basic human needs. One of the quotes that we're highlighting here says, the challenges are already very big, and they did not necessarily come about because of the pandemic. They already existed. So these are problems that, and these are systems that are very inequitable, and they've been around for a long time. What the pandemic is doing is just really bringing that, like highlighting it and shedding light to this already existing problem. And it needs to be fixed, whether pandemic or not, right? And that's what community was really voicing. For the next research question around community care and response, we were asking, in what ways have undocumented communities come together during this unprecedented time to provide support to one another? And through this question, one of the themes that came about is we care for each other. In this project, it was important to us to highlight community strengths as well as needs. The name of the report is Community Provides for a Reason. We started this based on community efforts and wanted to go beyond that. We want the state to do this, so it's not only up to the community. So when we started this, we were noticing that, like Alec had mentioned at the beginning, the relief funds that were coming out were exclusive, like we were leaving out undocumented folks. Like we saw the ways that the systems were not supporting community, and talking to them really reinforced that. And we are hoping to use this to show the state that this is the work that they should be doing in making sure that they're sustaining the lives of people. Then this next slide, we have on the report a story by one of the applicants who, so this is Anna's story. It's a very powerful story. Here's a little part of it that we're gonna read. So it reads, when the United States talks about undocumented immigrants in this country, they usually tend to focus on two things: what they take and how fast can we get them out. Not many people are willing to see past a status into the daily lives of actual hardworking and contributing families. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, my family and I felt invisible. The government was giving speeches about stimulus checks we knew we didn't qualify for. The Department of Unemployment was encouraging all of its working citizens to apply. We saw the rest of the country obtain benefits we knew we deserved to have as well. We were considered essential workers. We served the community. We put in the time and the effort. Yet we were left in the dark. And this was a very common sentiment we heard in many focus groups, where a lot of folks, like I remember even from the grassroots funds days in 2020, when we would call the applicants and they were just always very shocked. They were like, oh, I asked for help and you're actually calling me back. That doesn't happen. I usually don't hear back, or I get told I don't qualify and that's it. So yeah, folks were feeling that sentiment around being left behind or forgotten, but through these funds, they voiced that, they were able to feel that support.
So from all of this data collection, deep listening from, the beginning, like Daniela said, of the phone calls, to the more community-driven research process we did with the focus groups and listening sessions and interviews, we pulled out 4 recommendations based on really, really resonant themes that came out. So the first one is unemployment insurance, which has been a key safety net program for a lot of working families that undocumented immigrants have been left out of. It has been a need for a very long time, and the need has been further highlighted by the pandemic. The second one is one that is very obviously highlighted by the pandemic, but is also one that has been a long-term need. Healthcare insurance for undocumented immigrants is a huge, huge factor and a huge area of change, because as you could hear from the presentation throughout, one of the themes is that there's a lot of fear around healthcare in terms of cost, in terms of documents, et cetera. For a lot of folks, they're in the position of making the decision of accessing medical care for costly life-saving treatments versus, being in debt in ridiculous amounts. So this is a really key system change. Number 3 is cash assistance, really key without restrictions. That part is fundamental. So not just relief funds or, targeted programs, but programs without restrictions. For targeted programs, like, for example, rental relief programs, they're often too high barrier to be accessed. And it's really key that we understand that this is about trusting community. Undocumented people best understand their own lived realities, their own budgets, and how assistance can be best met. And we need to trust that. And number 4 is listen to community. This is key for everything, and we mean it in more than like an amorphous, like feel good way. It is very fundamental. So what this means is that any program from 1, 2, and 3 that is designed to benefit the community needs to be co-created with undocumented stakeholders. Thank you, everybody, for listening to our presentation. We hope you are able to read the report. And because we have a little bit of time left, I will also just pull up the report so we can see it, and also, hold a moment for if there are any questions. Let's see. So you can find it on WDC's brand new website. You download the report here. You can access the PDF, and here's what it looks like. I think finally, we just want to note that this was a huge collaborative process with tons of partners who helped us in so many various ways, but also that our project team itself, which is the best team on earth, I think, really made this report happen, made the storytelling process happen, and will make the advocacy efforts happen, along with a lot of partners in the upcoming months and years. Question mark.
Yeah, so with that, we wanted to open it up to see if there are any questions or anything that anybody wants to share.
And I'm wondering how y'all are planning to use this, right? I mean, it's beautiful in and out, the stories, the layout, the graphics, like all of your hard work in it. Like, how are you all like planning to share this and leverage it to make some of these changes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of the ways that we're going to be using this is we're going to be partnering with a few organizations and partners to further advocate on the, on the legislative side, since most of our focus in WDC is education equity work. We just are going to reach out to some organizations to be in partnership, and they can use this as a tool and co-create spaces with community to uplift this, to make some systemic changes.
That's great, thank you.
There's a question on the chat saying, wondering how many new folks you interacted with that maybe you hadn't worked with before. I don't even know. I mean, we started doing this in March of 2020, both from just the grassroots fund. We had to call every single applicant. So we had literally over, I think it was like 200, right, y'all? Like over 200 volunteers supporting us. We made phone calls ourselves, so we were able to talk directly to folks in our undocumented community, and then got to be able to be in community with a lot of volunteers. And then it was then the advocacy of all the other 3 funds that happen, and we're in community with those folks to make those happen. And then once again, like in the process of like having folks be part of this focus group. So we got to meet a lot of new people. and be in community with them to like do this work, not only learn from them, their stories, their struggles, and like what they want to see in the future, but then to also move towards that new advocacy space to like fight for these things that like folks desperately need and deserve. So a lot of folks, I don't even know how many, but it was probably hundreds.
And there's like 5 seconds left. So whatever y'all want to say.
Thank you.